previously I had not had anyone who actually knew what I was talking about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Athena's Agora. Hello, Emma.
Hi, Dr. Kirsten.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Oh, good. It's like we just are seeing each other for the first time today.
The first time. I know. It's amazing. Okay, so what I would like to talk about today is a little aspect of what happened after you were identified as gifted. Now, I know that whole idea of being identified as gifted comes with a lot of baggage a lot of times for people. But I wanted to pull out one aspect of it, and that is intellectual peers. So I guess that we have to go back first, though, to when you were tested. So way back when, a long time ago, when you were 5.5, one of your teachers, I'll tell you, one of Emma's teachers, came to me from kindergarten and said, well, preschool, and said, hey, you should really have Emma tested for giftedness. And I knew we had been dealing with a lot of things before that gave us a clue. We can get into that.
Like I could read?
You could read. Yeah, so that was a big clue. But anyway, so we had you tested for giftedness. And do you remember that?
I do remember that. I remember going to the building, and I remember sitting in a specific room, and because it was a building I had never been to before. So,
that's true.
Yeah. That's something important for my brain to hold on to as a 5.5-year-old. A new place.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I also remember, too, it was very sunny.
It was
that
sunny.
day.
Yeah, but it was dark inside the room.
It was.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so funny. Anyway, so once we figured out that you were gifted and like the level of giftedness that you had, I think that was really the kind of a clincher for me. Was I knew that from my background that making sure that kids could be able to find other students or other kids like them was really important, like their intellectual peers. Mm-hmm. Because, and I mean, people do this all the time, right? They have friends from different groups. Like if you're into chess, you have friends that you really enjoy playing chess with. Or if you have a, certain type of hairstyle. I don't know what.
I'm sure that there are some affinity groups with hairstyles.
Something.
If you like plants.
Oh, like if you like plants, right? People will get together and they like plants. So you have shared interests, common ground. Or, there are lots of different groups where people will help each other through difficult times and things like that. So I knew that I wanted to make sure that you had peers that you could relate to on an intellectual level. It's, of course, important that we have friends from all walks of life, and because we're in a global society. And so we want to make sure we do that as well. We want to have groups, or we want to be around people that we can relate to, So that was a big challenge for me, though, was trying to figure out, well, first of all, what to do with you.
Yeah.
No offense. And then also how to find friends for you that you could relate to on an intellectual level, knowing especially that you were young, but that your brain was like light years ahead of what I was used to. So.
Well, technically not that you were used to, because you also had the same sort of things.
That's true.
Yeah. So
that's true. I just wasn't identified as a child,
yeah.
I guess. And as your parent, I didn't really know what to do with that at the time. So.
Well, the next school after that did not do that for me.
No.
I'm going to tell you that right now. I do remember not having a lot of connection at that school, which I lasted a whole 3 weeks at.
3 whole weeks.
3 weeks. But it is seared into my memory.
Yeah.
But I do remember not really having a whole lot of, I didn't feel like I was able to connect with anyone, even the teachers, because at my previous school, I had my teacher who I was able to, talk about all sorts of things with.
Right.
But at the next school, I did not really have that at all.
Right.
So I think that was also part of it, that I wasn't given like the ability to express what I wanted to do academically, but also that I didn't have anyone to talk to about anything.
Right.
I was a very verbal child. I don't know if you remember that.
You still are.
I am.
Yeah, that's interesting too that you bring that up, because so we had moved and we went from one school where you really did bond with your teacher and are still in contact, which is pretty cool. And then to a new school, and I had approached them and said, we have this gifted child here. What do we do? And even though they said that they knew, they didn't really know. And we can talk about that more later.
Oh, we will.
But okay. But yeah, with your friend group that you made friends with the kids, because we had, even in those 3 weeks, we had a couple of parties that we went to, like birthday parties.
Oh, yeah.
And then, and we had play dates and things like that with the kids. So it wasn't that you weren't making friends. It's just that you weren't connecting intellectually with them, and they couldn't relate to you on that level. And I think you really craved that, like just by the way that you were acting. Emma became clinically depressed
in 3 weeks
in that time, and so that's why I pulled Emma out of that school, and then tried to find another suitable option for you. But anyway, that's another story for another time. We're going to be saying that a lot, apparently.
We will.
So that was my goal, right? Was to be able to find that. So luckily we had the online world, and I was able to, well, first of all, I was able to connect with a group of homeschooling students. We homeschooled because you were not able to learn at your level in a school. And that was a problem. Even the gifted schools that we looked at, there was no way they were going to be able to keep up with your intellectual abilities. And that's not to sound elitist. It's just that's not what you needed, something different. And I was lucky enough to be able to homeschool you. But that's a big thing that we have in our society, is that kids are not able to learn at their intellectual levels. And that's a soapbox, again, for another time. But when we're looking at these gifted schools, even your age mates were not at the same intellectual level as you. And I wasn't expecting to find a exact match or anything. I just wanted you to be able to have conversations with kids your own age or similar to you, where you could relate to each other. So luckily also you were part of another organization for gifted kids, the Davidson Institute. And from there, and this other group that we were in, we were able to find a wonderful co-op of parents with kids that were like you. So that was phenomenal.
At a similar age.
At a similar age.
And there were kind of a lot of us.
Yeah.
You were actually kind of impressive.
It was. You were the youngest, I believe.
I was the second youngest. Yeah,
okay.
Out of like the core group. The larger group was like, I don't even know all of them.
Yeah.
But out of the group where we all did things together for years, I was the second youngest.
Yes.
And I was also the shortest until I grew. Or actually the second shortest, because I was the second youngest.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, so that was important. What do you remember about the differences between before we had intellectual peer group for you compared to the peer group?
Well, I think that sometimes it could be a little bit hard for parents to figure out, not necessarily you, but like parents in general, to figure out if their kids actually do have intellectual peers or not, based on the way that they interact with each other. Because the way that I would interact with my intellectual peers would be very similar to how you would expect kids to play with each other. Mm-hmm. But instead of being really surface level, it was very, we were very cerebral and imaginative in the things that we did. like, it was very common for us to form societies.
Oh, wow.
With economies.
Yes.
And, you know, we had to find something that was valuable in that society. And then, like, it would be, like, you know, a specific type of berry or pottery that we made from mud.
Yeah, I was going to say, you made those mud pie
We made a lot of things. We had, like, there were a lot of systems in place. And that might have been a hint. But it was kind of similar to how you would, like, expect for kids to play with each other. But it was, for me, a different experience playing with them compared to playing with people from, I guess, my kindergarten. Was it kindergarten?
Yeah,
from kindergarten. Because we were able to actually, an idea like, oh, let's make this into a bowl, right? Or something, like, very cerebral would not be met with confusion. It would be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
I see.
And that's something also that I can still do with younger gifted kids. Like, it's not something you really necessarily age out of, at least not so far. Like, I can tell in interacting with younger kids whether they are, you know, typically considered to be gifted because of how we're able to just exist in conversation together. Like, it's an evident thing, which is pretty interesting.
It is interesting. And it's hard too, because you don't want to exclude anybody. No. Yeah, but there's a difference. It's just different. And it's not like you couldn't, or I couldn't, we couldn't, or can't relate to other people. It's just a difference. It's that you want to play chess or something.
Well, and it's also like, you can't have one person be everything for you. You know, right. You're going to have different friends who meet different parts of what you need from friendship. Like, there are different people that I talk about different things with. There are some people who I talk about ecological theory with, and there are some people who I don't talk about ecological theory with, and some people who I force to listen to ecological
exactly
theory.
What I was just thinking.
But it depends.
I know
on the
all
person.
about bryozoans
now.
You
do. And so will you, podcast listener, eventually.
Oh, my. So, yeah, and I tell that to the students, too, when they have... This was just reminding me of a conversation that I had with a student recently that was talking about, not that recent because now it's summertime, but in the spring.
Yeah.
They were talking about how they didn't have any friends. I said, well, what do you mean you don't have any friends? And they said, well, I have 2 friends, but we do play, I guess they played some game together. And then I said, well, what else do you do? You know, they do karate. And then, do you have friends there? Oh, yeah, I know some people there. Well, those are your karate friends, you know. And then come to think more, they also played an instrument. So they had friends with those. They were thinking that you had to have one person that was your friend, like everything friend. Like, no, one of the things is that we have friendships for different aspects of our lives. And I think that's really important. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that's something that even I, you know, when I'm thinking about this subject, you know, I don't want people to think that we're excluding anybody, because we're not. It's just an aspect.
Yeah. And you just need to make sure that you fill that aspect so that you feel fulfilled.
There you go.
Because otherwise you don't feel fulfilled, because there's a part of your socialization that's not being met.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for a lot of things, right? Even if you're really musical and you need something to fill that little aspect of yourself, or, you know, a sport or math club or something like that, right? Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and I think that when you grow up a little bit, then you still have that same sort of, I guess, dichotomy, because, like, when I went to college, I was friends with people who I went to college with, especially the people who also were very interested in the subjects
Sure.
that I am interested in. But I was also friends with the grad students and the professors that I knew because I was able to talk about ecological theory with them without having to define any terms. And that was very helpful for me and a new experience.
Yes.
Because previously I had not had anyone who actually knew what I was talking about. And that's another thing too, because gifted kids have such specific interests that you need to have people in their lives who they don't have to define terms to. They can just talk about using the jargon that they have learned from their interest.
Right, which is why it's really good to find a mentor, or like if your child is in a college setting, or even just a regular school setting, or homeschooled or whatever, find people where you can talk about your interests. Like Patrick was really into transportation, and so we had a person that he talked to about that, and math. And
it's also helpful for the family, for that person to not always be
there. For sure. Because otherwise you have to hear all the time about bryozoans.
Yeah, which you still do, but now less.
Yes, that's true.
Because I have friends who I can tell about it. Yeah.
Thank goodness. But yeah, that's a really important thing to remember, is that it's not, again, we're trying to satisfy the different aspects of the person, right? And it's actually, this isn't just for a gifted issue either. It is pervasive through everything, right? You want to be able to make sure that you have friends and people to talk to in, again, the different areas of your life. I was going to say something else too. When you have friends with people that are older, I think that's extremely important as well. When it comes to homeschooling, one of the big things, and we'll talk about this again too, is this idea of socialization. Well, what I've found is a lot of times if homeschooling is done correctly, I'll put correctly in quotes, of course, because there's not one way to do it. We can go all the way from unschooling to, classical homeschooling. There's a wide range in between. Yeah. But when it comes to socialization, a lot of times people who are not associated with homeschooling think that kids are, in a room and that's all that they do, and they don't interact with anybody else.
Because they think home.
Right.
And then that's it.
At home. Yeah. So it's not schooling, it's actually doing what you normally would do, like with your kids with a toddler, right? As a toddler, you have all these different classes. You can go to museums and take little classes here and there, go to the zoo and take classes. Everybody's out and about doing things. Library, right? Reading time. And it's the same thing. It's just at a different level. Yeah. Basically. So going back to this idea of socialization, being able to connect to people from different walks of life is super important, and something that the majority of homeschoolers do on a regular basis. And it's so nice because you get the opportunity to gravitate towards and find people who can relate to you on about different subjects.
That's how you find mentors. I mean, people talk about how, I have to find my kid a mentor. Like, how do I find my kid a mentor? You kind of can just let it happen most of the time. Yes. Because if you take them to places like museums or take them to college lectures and just kind of let them be there, a lot of the time, not with every potential mentor, because, there are some people who are not interested in that, but usually you'll find that people who are really interested in a subject kind of want someone to talk about the subject to them too. Exactly. And so they would actually be quite thrilled to have someone who actually, is also really, really interested in that. From anything. I mean, if you're really into politics, then take them to the, talks at City Hall. Exactly. And then, ta-da! I keep using examples of things that Patrick is interested in, like politics, because he has so many interests. Yes. But, anything. I mean, when kids come over to me or like email me like, hey, I want to talk about this. Like, awesome.
Mhm.
What do you know about vision in elasmobranchs? You know, things like that. Because I'm also interested in those things.
Thank you. Yeah, so that brought up Patrick too. I was just thinking about when we went to the State of the City.
State of the City.
And they had a whole bunch of booths set up. And there was one about, of course, the transportation around the city. And Patrick talked to the guy at the booth the whole time. And the guy at the booth was so excited to talk to Patrick
about traffic lights and potholes.
Exactly. So, if you go and you don't even have to seek out, but just show up somewhere.
Well, that's the same thing with like networking, because people put a lot of pressure on networking when really it's just about making friends with people who share your interests or share something that you would like to do in your career.
Right. Exactly. So also, though, if you have trouble finding it, which when you were younger, we found this group for you, but it was harder for Patrick. And so one of the things that I did was I started Athena's. And I wanted to make sure that I had, not only for you, but also for Patrick, a broader view. I wanted you guys have connections with people across the country, across the globe. Like you took a class with what was then EPGY, which was, I don't remember the...
Stanford.
Yeah, the Stanford. I don't know.
Something educational... Something gifted youth.
Yes, something like that. But that was a long time ago. It doesn't exist anymore. And you had a class with somebody from Iceland and from the UK, the East Coast. Russia too?
I think so. Either Russia or Ukraine.
I don't know, but it was really, it was so cool. And you made friends with people from all over the world. And it was
We became Facebook friends.
You did. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Yeah. And so I wanted to make sure that you got that experience too. And also, as an educator, I knew of a couple of students around, like people would contact me when, friend of a friend, and to help them with their gifted kids. And I knew that I wanted to help with the kids that didn't have intellectual peers near them.
Well, I got really lucky. I mean, we didn't have the same sort of thing for Patrick as we did for me. I don't know what happened with gifted kids in our area during my age group, but there were a lot of them. And then for Patrick's time, we didn't have that same sort of group at all.
There weren't as many in his group. Luckily, I had him in a Montessori preschool just to have him out of the house. No offense to Patrick. But
he needed to be somewhere else to explore.
But found an intellectual peer too, who ended up also being in the Davidson Institute, which is also what Patrick was in too. And
also my friends had little siblings,
exactly,
which was also helpful.
That was very helpful too. So luckily we did have some, but it just wasn't the same. But anyway, I started Athena's in order to help meet the needs of kids from all over. And that is how we met students like Avalon. Like Avalon, who now works at Athena's also as a teacher. She's amazing. Yes. So Emma and Avalon, you guys were friends in, I think, the very first... You became friends.
Very early. I think it was probably the second year. Yeah.
Of Athena's. We were like 9 or something. I think maybe so. Yeah. And then met in real life. That was super fun because Avalon's from the East Coast. We're on the West Coast. And
we went to the Egyptian Museum together.
That's right, in San Jose, California.
Not Costa Rica.
No.
Yeah.
But
and it's something where it can be really difficult for kids, who are in the Midwest, like there are some places in the Midwest where you have a lot of community, but there are places where you're pretty rural and you don't necessarily have a huge pool of people that could potentially be your intellectual peers. Yeah. So having things online is pretty important.
It is. There are big groups. I know, like there's a Chicagoland area.
I don't count Chicago as part of that issue.
No. And then like the Twin Cities and things like that. And in Colorado, of course. But I knew a couple of people in like Idaho. I said Iowa, Idaho. And there was one student I remember whose mom wrote to me, and she was so happy to have found us, especially after her child was in the first year and he was from Idaho. And he made friends at Athena's, and I guess they must still be.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk to some students and see how they're doing, and they have kept in contact. I know we've obviously kept in contact with Avalon, but there are other students who have.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple. There are two students that were from different states who connected on dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they went to a dinosaur camp
That's
together.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's fun.
And we get told about those.
Yes, which I love.
We love that.
I love that. So, yeah, if you have any stories, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it for now. But we'll have to pull out some of those other topics.
Yes.
Because there's a lot there, which is really interesting.
If anyone wants a podcast all about bryozoans,
oh, boy.
I can do that.
Oh boy, I think you need to do your own. You're going to need to do your own social media.
It'll be a special post for us.
Okay, sounds great. All right, I think that's all.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Thanks again for joining us, and remember to
learn something to keep your brain happy.
There you go. Learn something new. All right. Bye for now.